thank God that you are the Secretary of State for the state of California.
That is LA City Councilman Kevin De Leon celebrating California's Secretary of State Shirley Weber, the City Council commemorating February 14th as Shirley Weber Day in a festive ceremony. And that's nice for LA, but what is Shirley Weber doing for Bakersfield and Kern County? A state assemblyman and his legal team would argue she's disenfranchising voters. Let's break it down. Last fall, Kevin McCarthy announced he was resigning from Congress. California law allows for a 5-day extension for any candidate to file for his seat. Assemblyman Vince Fong, who had already announced his re-election bid for the state assembly, jumped in the race. While he no longer wanted to run for re-election to the assembly, California law prevents a candidate from withdrawing their election papers. After Fong was sworn in as a candidate, in comes Secretary Weber, who removed Fong's name from the candidate list. Why? Weber's office says it was in violation of an elections code. Then Fong filed suit against the Secretary of State's office, leading to a crucial court battle that may have a lasting impact on election law.
What follows will probably change the landscape immensely, and I would venture to say you could see this referenced in the future with larger elections, possibly even future presidential elections.
In a Sacramento County Superior Courtroom, Judge Shelley Chang shot down the Secretary of State's argument.
The court does not necessarily accept the Secretary of State's position.
That prompted a response from Weber's office, and an argument lawyers say they are likely to repeat in a later court date.
Let's say there was a very popular candidate. That candidate could run for governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, treasurer, and controller at the same time, presumably win all of those races, resign from all of them but the governor's office, and then appoint their friends to all the other constitutional officers. That's the import, the practical import of petitioner's interpretation.
And I agree, it's an absurd result, but the issue is, what does the statute say?
The statute was ruled to apply to candidates seeking both a party and an independent nomination, not two nominations with the same party. Therefore, Chang said,
The court believes that Elections Code 8003 only applies to independent nominations.
In addition, experts like former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani say that Fong has a case as an automatic 5-day filing extension was triggered when the incumbent, McCarthy, resigned. That allowed anyone who meets congressional qualifying standards to file. Fong met all 3 requirements.
It does say that if an incumbent decides not to run, that opens the window for someone to submit their nomination.
Fong reiterating the point during an Eyewitness News candidate interview in January.
Under the Elections Code, there's a 5-day extension when the incumbent doesn't run. And it was to ensure that every single voter had a choice between anybody who wanted to run for office. The Secretary of State, unfortunately, was using an arcane 100-year law that doesn't apply in this situation, and that was in conflict. And it went against the fundamental principle of our elections, which is the voters should have the right to choose the person they felt was the best representative for them.
And the voters did choose overwhelmingly in favor of Fong, not once but twice in both the primary and special primary.
Fong has a good argument that he's the clear leader for the congressional seat. He's already said that he does not want to run for the assembly seat. So it's not like he's trying to run for 2 different offices at once. So in his argument to the Court of Appeal will be that he's trying to comply with the spirit of the law.
Weber's office has argued that if Fong wins both his assembly and congressional races, Fong would be disenfranchising voters by only serving one office. But Rahmani believes Fong's team will also argue that taking Fong off the ballot will disenfranchise voters now that he has advanced to both congressional runoffs by such a wide margin.
Removing him from one race where he's already won may disenfranchise some voters. If the Court of Appeals is going to step in and either affirm the decision or reverse it, they have to do so soon.
How soon? The arguments in the Court of Appeal will be heard on Thursday, April 4th. The certification date is Friday, April 12th. A short window expected for a monumental decision. Professor Anderson says removing Fong from the ballot could be seen as an act of the court overturning the result of an election.
Democracy is very precious, and overturning any sort of will of the people is something that needs to be considered very seriously.
But it is not just Fong who has run for multiple offices at the same time in this last election window in California. Republican U.S. Senate candidate James Bradley also ran as the candidate for the far-right American Independent Party.
They asked me if I would be what they call a placeholder for Donald J. Trump in the event that he was removed from the ballot. I said, let me think about that. Split second and said yes.
Another former Senate candidate argues a blunder from Weber's office may have cost her more votes during March's primary. Democrat Christina Pascucci had her ballot designation stripped from ballots mailed across the state. The moderate Democrat prided herself on her career in journalism and wanted her designation to read local television journalist. Instead, it was left blank, leaving her less recognizable to voters. How concerned are you that an error like this would have an impact on people being able to vote for you?
Biggest concern around all of this is the future of our democracy. Really, right now across the nation, you have people saying that, questioning whether or not we have free and fair elections. And so that's why I think that making sure these types of mistakes don't happen is imperative to instilling trust in the system and in the entity that is tasked with free and fair elections.
Eyewitness News has made multiple attempts to reach the Secretary of State's office for an interview, the office turning down requests both related to Fong and Weber's general performance.
Thank God that you are the Secretary of State for the state of California. Quite frankly, I wish you were the Secretary of State concurrently with the state of Georgia as well, too, and some other red states throughout the country at the same time, to make sure that we protect the integrity of the Democratic vote.
Reporting in Bakersfield, Will Silverstein, Eyewitness News.